right, good evening. I'm Shishir. I'm responsible for, as I said, for the YouTube product, which means the teams of people that build everything you see as a viewer, as a creator, and as a marketer. Today I'm actually going to talk about three things. I think they overpromised by one. Three things I've learned about online video. I've now worked in this space for about 4.5 years, which I think makes me a dinosaur in the online video space. And over that time, I've learned three wonderful things to share with you. But before I do, I wanted to just share some high-level picture of YouTube. So first, just the numbers. YouTube now is streamed 4 billion hours a month, an enormous number, growing at an incredible pace, 900 million monthly viewers around the world, and receives 72 hours of upload every minute, a number that just can't seem to stop growing. But I think an easier way to understand the scale is with just a particular story, and I picked one that I liked a lot. How many of you saw Felix Baumgartner jump from space? All right. So I was going to tell a story about his jump. So this is a chart that plots both his jump and the number of people watching him at every moment of his jump, and I'll walk you through it. So before he left the ground, he hit a very important mark. The number of people that tuned in to view the live stream of the Olympics was about 600,000 concurrent viewers. He hit that number before he even left the ground. At about 25,000 feet, he had about 2 million viewers. He hit 1,000 feet and hit about 5 million viewers. At its peak, at 128,000 feet, up in the stratosphere, he had 8 million concurrent viewers, more than 10 times larger than the next biggest live event ever done on the internet. And then he came down, landed on the ground, and by the time the press conference came, there was nobody watching anymore. But the important stat here, not only did he receive 8 million concurrent viewers, which is an amazing stat, it was also a great sign of the scale of the platform. This event by itself took about 8% of the entire global internet bandwidth on that day. I think it puts in perspective how important this platform has become. All right, so I said I have three things to share with you. So let me start with the first one. Fragmentation and history repeating itself. If you ask anybody about the YouTube thesis, it's very simple. We believe that it took 60 years for cable to replace and extend broadcast, and for us to go from 3 channels to hundreds of channels. And we believe that the internet is allowing that to happen again. And we believe that we're moving from a world of hundreds of channels to hundreds of thousands of channels. And if you think back to the advent of cable, and you look back in the 1980s when a lot of these new cable networks were starting, you'll go and find articles about folks like Ted Turner and people who thought he was crazy for starting a new 24-hour news network. They said it seems crazy. Everybody should only need an hour of news. Why would you need 24 hours of news? And yet now we have many different news networks. So I thought I'd tell a little story about a particular channel that inspired me. How many of you know this guy? So his name is Salman Khan. Goes by Sal Khan, so not be confused with the other Salman Khan. And this story is actually a personal story. So Sal and I went to college together. We both went to MIT out in Boston. We left college. He went down the finance route, and he joined a hedge fund. I went down the technology route, ended up here. And then we kept in touch. About 10 years later, we were living in the same town and got together quite often. I had just joined YouTube. And he came over for dinner, and he told me, it's great that you just joined YouTube. I actually have a channel on YouTube myself. And I said, that's wonderful. What do you do? And for those of you that don't know the story, he has a cousin that he was tutoring in math. And the easiest way he could find to tutor her was that she would send him questions. He would solve the problems, record himself, and send the video back to her. And at the time, the easiest way to send video to somebody was post it to YouTube, and then she could go watch it when she was ready. I said, thank you very much. We finished dinner. I went to work the next day, and I went and looked it up. So at the time, Stanford and MIT had committed and were uploading videos of every lecture taking place on their campus, including every lecture I went to. And I called up Sal, and I said, I don't know if you realize this. This is 2008. I said, I don't know if you realize this, but you're now receiving more viewership than Stanford and MIT combined. And I told him about the YouTube Partner Program, which, as many of you know, allows creators to earn money from their work on YouTube. We put him in the Partner Program, and he started making money from this content. Now, you fast forward a few months, and he and his wife came over for dinner. And I remember this very well because his wife was pregnant at the time, and my wife was pregnant as well. And they sat down for dinner, and he said, "Thank you very much for getting me into the Partner Program. I just wanted to tell you that the money's actually become quite meaningful. It's now getting very close to covering my mortgage, and if I just plot out a little bit further," you know, he's a mathematician, "if I plot out just a little bit further, I think it's going to cover my hedge fund salary. And I enjoy doing this so much more that maybe I should quit my job and do this." And his pregnant wife looks over at me and gives me this stone look. "Please answer this question correctly." And Sal said, "You know, do you think I should quit? Do you think this will keep going?" And thankfully, I told him, yes, I think it's going to keep going, and he quit his job. And the rest of the story, I think most people know, but he now reaches 7 to 8 million viewers a month, which is about 4 times what PBS reaches, making him, I think, the single largest educator on the planet. And I can't take credit for all of that success, but at that one moment, I think I answered the question correctly. So what we envision is a world full of channels like these, built by all new creators with all new ways of thinking about how to reach their audiences. We believe so strongly in it that we've gone and rebuilt the entire product with this idea in mind. And if you think a little bit about YouTube, YouTube has traditionally stood for individual videos. Everything about the site was an individual video. You share a video, you have a related video, you have view counts on a video. And over the course of the last year or so, we've been transforming the entire site to center around channels. The first step of that was introducing this thing we call the guide, which now follows you across the entire site. But it's a very simple idea. We like to borrow the analogy from television and say we'd like to give everybody a personal TV guide full of just the channels they love. And that experience now comes to you on your homepage, on all of your channel pages, across the search results, while you're watching video, and everywhere you can find it, you're just a step away from your guide. And we're also working on making sure that we can help people fill their guide with great channels, with things like our new subscription centers. So we believe very strongly in this thesis. Fragmentation is happening, and it's really history repeating itself. All right, number 2. The world is flat. So I have a particular video to show you, but let me explain what you're going to see. But don't start it yet. Go back. Okay, let me explain what you're going to see. So this is a chart that every one of these bubbles represents search queries on a particular day. The size of the bubble is how many of those queries were received on that day. The color of the bubble isn't that meaningful. It's the category of the content, so music, sports, so on. And it just plays through and highlights some of the interesting things that happened over the last few months. And you'll just get a sense of what's been happening on YouTube. So now go ahead and play the video. So you'll see a cluster of big music content. Some of the green ones that come up are some of the big fights, boxing matches, and so on that come. You'll see Smosh pops up on a regular basis. That's because he uploads every Wednesday. There's the Olympics. A lot of important traffic coming from the Olympics. And then there was this little video called Gangnam Style that started growing and growing and growing and growing. And it doesn't really stop. So the reason I show this, and Rajan talked a little bit about it already, is a real sign to us that the #1 most watched video on YouTube came from South Korea. And so we actually went and pulled some numbers that I wanted to share with you. So we're a US-based company, so there's a lot of assumption from folks in the US about US content creators. So if you, go ahead to the next slide. They saw this already. So every day, there's 150 human lives spent on YouTube. I don't know if that's the best metric for it, but that seemed like a good one for this example. Now, of those, 18 of those lives are spent by US viewers watching US content. It's actually not that many. 42 of the 150 are spent by viewers watching content uploaded in the same country as them. You can kind of think of this as all the import viewership, which for those of you doing the math means that 90 of the 150, or about 60% of viewership, is watched in a country other than, is watched on videos that are uploaded in a country other than where the viewer is. We call these our export markets. And one of the particularly interesting things about this is we then go look at the site, which is really an export site if you think about YouTube that way. And if you look at countries and rank them by their export levels, the #1 country in the world is the United States. It exports more content than anyone else. United States content does get watched everywhere. But #2 is India. And I think says a lot about the prevalence of Indian cinema, Indian education, all of the different genres that are being built by people here and being spread through the world. In fact, when we signed on to stream the IPL, there was a big question about, oops, go back one. There was a big question about where the viewership for IPL would occur. And there was a healthy debate about it. But in the end, it was quite interesting. Over 40% of the viewership of the IPL actually happened outside of India, even for an event that you would think would be mostly an Indian phenomenon. So this is something we believe very strongly. We believe that not only is the world flat, we believe that the lines between different countries, geographies, cultures, languages are being erased very, very quickly, and it's important for everyone to take a global perspective in everything that they do. All right, #3. So the #3 thing that we've learned about online video is that there's no such thing as online video. It's literally a set of words that we try very hard to erase from our vernacular, and I'd like to tell you why. So when I started this job, people would think of online video like this. They said, I have a television set, and that has television content, and I have a PC, and that has online video. And gradually, this line started blurring in both directions. On one side, content that was traditionally on your television set started migrating to your PC, as has happened very quickly in India. Rajan talked about it as well. The other side, all of the services that you're receiving on those on your PC started appearing on every screen, on your television, on your phone, and so on. And we believe that this distinction is going away. There is no online video, there's just video. One easy way I find to think about it is ask everybody to think back. Can you remember a time when you had a PC that didn't have a web browser? You can raise your hand. The right answer is everybody can remember. Now, who would buy a computer today that didn't have a web browser? It almost seems like a ridiculous question. In fact, we as a company sell a lot of computers that only have web browsers. And yet the #1 biggest screen in your house, your television set, likely is not connected to the internet. And we think that this is just a matter of time. So it started first with mobile devices, and we invested very heavily here. We are at about 25% of viewership around the world is on mobile devices. India is a little bit higher than that. And in countries like Japan and Korea, we've now crossed 50%. So the first screen that became connected is actually the small screen in your pocket. And we've invested a lot in making sure all of our experiences, all of our products, all of our services scale naturally across all those devices. We also are strong believers that the same thing is happening on television. And we've invested a lot of our effort in making sure we have great YouTube experiences directly in television sets and in every device that connects to a television, whether it be a game console or a DVD player or so on, and that all of the patterns for how your experience works in one place translates very quickly into your television experience as well. So those are 3 messages I wanted to leave you with. We think that we're in the middle of history repeating itself, and we're moving from a world of a few hundred channels to hundreds of thousands of channels. We believe the world is incredibly flat, and we believe that there is no such thing as online video, and what we're talking about here isn't about an online phenomenon, it's what's changing video in general. And with that, I'll thank you and ask our MCs to bring you to the next person.